Paul, first I want to say thanks for your service for over 20 years. I'm sure it's kind of a frustrating ministry.
This or sell used cars.
I want to help illuminate what the taxpayers are buying. I had a series of questions here. What percentage of inmates currently incarcerated do you speculate are actually innocent? What is the average length of a prison sentence? And could you maybe evaluate the current state of rehabilitation in prisons?
As far as how many people are actually innocent in prison, I have no idea, and that's one of those things until you're actually, that's like, proving the negative. So I don't know, we've had and one of the things I think is, a huge hats off has to go to Barry Scheck and the Innocence Project, I think, who's done more to, I think, discredit in a lot of respects the criminal justice system than almost anyone else. I think they're up to over 300 exonerations now. But those are only in cases involving DNA evidence and where people were actually proven to have been physically innocent and that. But then when you think of places like the Rampart scandal in Los Angeles, when it comes out that police framed at least 100, maybe 200 innocent people of crimes they didn't commit, and the fact that you have these so-called police scandals cropping up on a regular basis, it does make you wonder how many people are actually innocent. So one of the things that I like that's interesting about the Rampart scandal is that over 100 people were proven to be factually innocent, set up by police on gun and drug charges they did not commit, and every single one of them pleaded guilty to a crime they didn't commit. And I think that's one of the beauties of the American criminal justice system is you can get people to confess in open court to crimes they didn't commit, and and for some reason regimes like Stalin get a bad rap in that, but and I think that's an amazing result, is the fact that you can get so many guilty pleas to innocent people. That's one of the things too when you look at people that have been exonerated by DNA evidence, is that a lot of them, like 25% of people who have been proven innocent through DNA testing falsely confessed to crimes they didn't commit, and a certain number of them also pleaded guilty to crimes they didn't commit. So that's a pretty impressive. And I think has anyone seen the documentary by Errol Morris, The Thin Blue Line? Okay, classic film on one man's exoneration. He's wrongfully convicted of killing a cop in Texas, and the documentary closes on an interview with the prosecutor who sent Randall Harris to death row, and Errol Morris, the documentary filmmaker, asked him, so do you have any problem thinking maybe you sent an innocent man to death row? And the prosecutor's response, I think, is pretty good. He goes, hey, any prosecutor can convict a guilty man. It takes a good prosecutor to convict an innocent man. So, so I think that's pretty impressive. As far as your other question, as far as like the overall state of rehabilitation in prisons, pretty much it's largely been eliminated in most states. There's vestiges of educational programs going on in some places, but overall, they've made it pretty clear for a long time that rehabilitation is not a priority for anyone. And for that, just look at the budgets. Just see how much. The Illinois DOC has $1 billion budget. How much of that's going to education? That shows you where the priorities are. Then the other thing too. This is also what I meant about spending money on stuff to make things worse. There's a lot of things that they can do, like make affordable phone calls. Bid out the phone contracts to who can provide the best service at the lowest cost. And they don't do that. So there's a lot of things that can be done that don't even cost anything, that would improve recidivism outcomes and make prisoners less likely to recidivate and improve community ties and stuff. Yet they make conscious decisions not to do it, and I think that's pretty critical.
What's the average length of sentence?
I think part of the BJS, last time I looked, I think it's like the average sentence is like something like 36 months, something like that, but that kind of doesn't really matter because the Sentencing Project just came out with another report a couple months ago about something like 10% of all prisoners in this country are serving life sentences. So, I think that's probably that's probably more telling because you come up with that 36-month number by the people that are serving life sentences, and then you lump that in with the people that are serving a year and a day or whatever, so, which I'm not really sure what mean averages mean, but I'm not a statistician, so.
Thanks very much, Paul, for your presentation and for Prison Legal News. I was one of your loyal readers when I was inside. It was a very useful publication in many instances, both for my own situation and for other people. I wanted to ask you a little bit about the question I mean, if we're talking about reversing mass incarceration, there's always a big kind of emphasis on the fact that we have a lot of people who are innocent. Mm-hmm. We have people who are convicted of nonviolent offenses and so forth. But, and like in California, we have this definition of what they call non-non-nons. People who are nonviolent, non-sexual, and what's the other one? But there's this,
just broken out of lock.
Right. But my question is, can you really reverse mass incarceration without dealing with that whole definition and that whole dividing line between people who are convicted of violent and nonviolent crimes, and because of the way in which violent crimes are constructed anyway in terms of the legal process?
Well, I think that comes down to more the thing about the political construct. I think we have to blame our friends and allies in the drug policy reform movement for coming up with this thing about the so-called nonviolent offenders or nonviolent defendants in that, because I think violence is a relative term, and I think that's one of those things. If I go out in the parking lot right now and someone holds me up at gunpoint and they take my wallet and whatever money I got in it, I mean, it's a bad experience. So, no one likes to be held up at gunpoint. I don't want to lose my wallet and everything else. But then on the other hand, if I work for a company for 29 years and someone loots my pension fund and leaves me out in the street, I mean, that's one of the things. I think that, I get robbed at gunpoint in the parking lot, I lose whatever money I have in my wallet, I got to replace my credit cards, get a new driver's license, whatever. Okay, that's a bummer, and I'll go home and talk to my friends, and wow, I was scared, it was traumatic, and whatever. But chances are, I'll get over it. But when you lose your pension fund, or you lose your house through mortgage fraud, or stuff like that, these are life-changing experiences, and hey, that's all okay. It's nonviolent, But I think that goes back to what Bertolt Brecht said, is a man can steal more with a pen than with a gun. So. And I think those are the differences, too, of the crimes by the rich versus the crimes by the poor. And in this country, all the discussion around crime centers on crime by poor people, or as I like to say, crime in the streets, not crime in the suites. And I think that's largely, and I have to say is that, I'm not a prison abolitionist. I don't believe prisons should be abolished. I think my problem is just who's in them. And I think the fact that men like Henry Kissinger and George Bush and Barack Obama walk the streets free men is an outrage. And I think, and no one can tell me there's justice in this world as long as they do. So I think that's one of the things that, it's kind of a false construct, this whole thing about, the nonviolent offenders and stuff like that. And I think that one of the things that for a long time, people have let the proponents of mass incarceration talk about public safety, and where any type of hint or any type of effort for even the most minimal or modest of prison or criminal justice reform is met with cries of like, oh, if this happens, your kids are going to get raped and killed. And it's like, well, no, I don't really think that if prisoners can get Pell Grants to to do something to improve themselves, maybe it'll keep someone from getting raped and killed. And I think that's one of those things that, that's one of the things I think a lot of criminal justice reformers have really let that mantle, have really let our opponents really seize on that and control that, and I don't think that's right. We shouldn't let that happen, because I think that what we see over and over again, I think that's one of the things like with the Human Rights Defense Center, when we challenge jails that have postcard policies where they limit all communication prisoners can have with what will fit on a postcard, I think we're able to come into court and we're able to come into the community and say that, we think people should be able to communicate by letter. We're here defending a 500 years old means of communication that was good enough for our founding fathers and has been a staple of American history. And we're the ones that are going to protect your community because we think your sheriff is endangering you by enacting these policies.